Welcome to America's Heroes Group.
Welcome back to America's Heroes Group, our roundtable with our partner, Chicago Regional Office of Veterans Benefits Administration, February's Black History and American Heart Month. Today is Saturday, February 11th, 2023. Our host is Cliff Kelley. I'm Sean Claiborne, co-host. Our executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Ivan Ortega of Scouts Arnold Productions. And we have a panelist on the line with us. We have Monica Arango. She is a subject matter expert and POW coordinator exam liaison for the Veterans Benefits Administration's Chicago Regional Office. Molly Sikora, she is a Regional Office Veterans Benefits Administration Management Analyst and serves on the Director's staff. And Roberto Salazar, he serves as a Chicago Regional Office Veterans Benefits Administration Records and Information Management Specialist. He works in the Support Services Division and is a U.S. Marine Corps Iraq combat veteran. We're going to talk about veterans with Amyotrophic Lateral Sclerosis, or otherwise known as ALS. How are you guys doing today?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us.
My pleasure.
My name is Molly Sikora. Like you said, we are here to discuss amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as ALS, and the ancillary benefits. Today, I will be speaking on the basic eligibility. Roberto will explain how to file an ALS claim and discuss development. And lastly, Monica will go over the rating process and answer any questions. So to start, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, more commonly known as Lou Gehrig's disease, is a neuromuscular disease that causes degeneration of nerve cells in the brain and spinal cord, resulting in weakness, muscle atrophy, and spontaneous muscle activity. Entitlement to service connection for ALS is considered on a presumptive basis, meaning service connection can be granted as long as the veteran has served at least 90 consecutive days on active duty. A veteran is automatically entitled to 100% service connection based on confirmation of diagnosis of ALS by a medical provider, regardless of residuals. ALS may present itself in two ways. First, it may begin affecting the upper body with symptoms beginning with speech impairment, eating impairment, and upper extremity issues, and works its way down. The other begins to affect all extremities, starting with challenges with mobility, lower extremities, bowel issues, and urinary, and works its way up the body. If one of these residual conditions can be independently granted at 100%, only then can that condition be separated from your ALS diagnosis and thus considered for additional entitlement. Otherwise, all ALS residuals will be included in the service-connected ALS condition. Again, as long as a veteran served the minimum 90 consecutive days on active duty and has a confirmed diagnosis of ALS from a medical professional, they will be entitled to 100% service connection. Roberto will now be discussing filing an ALS claim and development for supporting documents.
Roberto?
Thank you, Molly. Again, so I'm Roberto, and I will be discussing the claims process as it pertains to ALS. When it comes to ALS or any other claim for compensation, the first thing that is required is an official claim. This can be done by filing VA Form 526EZ, an application for disability compensation and related compensation benefits. When filing our VA Form 526EZ, you can check the box that says FDC program or standard claim process. The difference between FDC and standard is that with the FDC program, you are telling VA that you are submitting all required evidence up front. This will essentially expedite your claim. With the standard format, VA will go through the process of gathering everything required to make that decision. A veteran can also file an intent to file, which is a one-year placeholder. This secures compensation paid for an application received within a year. An intent to file can be submitted on VA Form 0966. A supplemental claim can also be submitted. A supplemental claim can be used to reopen a claim or for reconsideration of a previously denied claim. This type of claim can be submitted on VA Form 0995. Regardless of how the claim is filed, an ALS claim will be expedited. The evidence that VA will need is, first of all, a DD-214 showing at least 90 days of continuous active duty service, And they will also need evidence of a current diagnosis. You can submit this from your private physician, VA physician. It just needs to be evidence of a current diagnosis. And the veteran can also submit evidence by a medical provider. A veteran can also submit the claim, and then we can go ahead and request that examination for the veteran. Going from there, let's talk about e-benefits, because this is a very important part of what VA has done to help veterans expedite their claims in a way electronically. E-benefits is a portal which you can reach by going to www.va.gov, and under the disability title, click File a Claim for Compensation and follow the prompts. Once we have all of that evidence, the DD-214 and showing the 90 days continuous active duty service and the evidence of a current diagnosis, that's really all we need to expedite the ALS claim. From here, I will pass it on to Monica, and she will go ahead and talk about the rating process.
Thank you, Roberto, and good afternoon. My name is Monica Arango, and I will be discussing the rating process for ALS claims. As Roberto mentioned, the process that is expedited through the FDC process, the fully developed claim, once we receive a claim that already has an examination, we can address the residual disabilities based on the evidence of record at the time that the claim is received. If at the time that the claim is received, the examination has not been requested, then that examination would need to be requested before we can make a decision. The only time that an examination is not required in order to make a decision is typically on an initial ALS claim when there is a confirmed diagnosis received with the initial claim. Once the claim is reviewed, we look at where we currently stand with the current evaluation for ALS. So, as previously noted, the evaluation for ALS is 100%, regardless of what the symptoms are associated with ALS. So, if the symptoms have not developed to the point where they can independently be separated on their own, then they are all associated with the ALS and granted at one single 100%. Once an evaluation reaches 100% independently, they can be broken away from the residuals altogether, and all the residuals can be addressed individually. The only time that we can do this is if we have one condition that can stand alone on its own at 100%. Some examples of that are aphonia, loss of use of bilateral lower extremities, loss of use of bilateral upper extremities, and respiratory failure with the required use of an oxygen tank. So those are just some examples of what 100% independently looks like, but there are other entitlements that can be received in the sense of compensation above the 100%, such as housebound. Housebound is an entitlement that can be given when there is one individual disability at 100%, and then an additional disability at least 60% disabling. And that 60% can be a combined 60%. So once we are able to open the doors to grant a separate 100%, that already gives us entitlement to housebound. Typically, when we are able to grant a separate 100%, that means that the entitlement for care is typically higher than that at the housebound level. Sometimes aid in attendance can display itself with the evidence of record. Aid in attendance is the entitlement that is provided when a veteran cannot take care of their activities of daily living. This can be things such as getting dressed, being able to button your buttons or zipper your zipper, or even being able to independently care for your activities of daily living. So if you need assistance, then that could qualify you for aid in attendance. Now, once the disabilities then progress, they could possibly reach a level where there could be higher levels of aid in attendance. And those codes are typically R1, so it's aid in attendance at the L level, which is basic, aid in attendance at higher level, which is R1, and then there's aid in attendance at the highest level, which is R2. So when we receive a claim for increase, we are looking for entitlements and eligibility for all of these additional entitlements. So you don't necessarily have to claim it. But if you claim it, we are absolutely going to consider all those additional entitlements.
So tell me.
Once we review the... Oh, go ahead. Did you have a question?
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, once we review the claim and we determine the examination information and we, make the decision, then we go ahead and process a rating decision, and then that rating decision gets processed and then it goes out. And I was just going to say that in about 2 weeks from the time that we make the decision, the veteran typically gets that rating decision.
No, Molly Sikora, I had a question because you mentioned earlier that it's not for 90 days of active duty service. Is that correct? In order to be qualified to file a claim, is one of the qualifications, or?
Actually, that is correct. I'll go ahead and pick up the questions since I'm going to be kind of picking up all of the questions. If there's something specific, I will hand it off to Molly for that. But basically what she had said with the 90 days is that that's basic veteran service. And so the entitlements to ALS, it could be any period of service. So in some entitlements like pension, peacetime service doesn't qualify. In this entitlement of presumption, it goes for any period of service. So the only thing that we need to do in order to have a veteran qualify is that they have to have a confirmation of veteran service and then a confirmed diagnosis.
So, for example, a person could be in the National Guard and maybe they serve 2 weeks during the summertime, 1 week during the month, or one weekend during the month. Those days could add up to 90 days of service?
It depends, but typically when we're talking about 90 days, we're talking about a continuous service, and it's based off of on a DD-214. So when you're talking about guard service or reserve service, when you're going for 2 weeks or, a drill or whatever, it's based on a line of duty. And so in order to qualify for this type of presumption, they would have to have those 90 days. So it would probably not qualify specifically for the scenario that you're explaining.
Now, for ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, does it have to be military connected or service connected in any kind of way, or can it be someone who maybe developed ALS after they got out of the military, but now they have maybe no other resources, so they're going back to the VA to see if they can get aid or help or some kind of benefit?
That's a great question, and that's actually what presumptive means. That means that regardless of the service, regardless of what you were exposed to, regardless of it could have had nothing to do with service. We're saying that if you were in active duty and served for at least 90 days and you developed ALS at some point in your life, then we are going to provide compensation for you.
Mm-hmm. Now, ALS is a terminal disease, if I understand it correctly. So when people get diagnosed with ALS and they come to you for benefits, what are some of the things that the VA can provide as far as benefits goes to make that path, an unfortunate path, better for that person? You talked about some things that, home and aid and attendance at home, things like that. But what are some of the specific things that make a person's life better as a veteran that they can look forward to or get from the VA? Because I know VA has a lot of different benefits that are specific that people can take advantage of, like counseling, things like that. What are some of the other things they might be able to take advantage of?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we consider aid and attendance, like I said, that's the special multi-compensation component of it. We're also looking at the overall evaluation. So the evaluation overall is 100%. So with that, we're going to get Chapter 35 and DEA benefits. That is once any veteran reaches 100%, not just ALS, any veteran reaches 100%, we're going to get that 100% compensation under DEA. That benefit for DEA Chapter 35. Also, all veterans who are filing a claim for ALS will also get special adaptive housing and the auto allowance. And so what this is the auto allowance allows a veteran to work with a dealer to convert the vehicle to the adaptations that are required for their needs to use the vehicle. Special adaptive housing is an allowance that is provided to make modifications to the home. there is a benefit called special home adaptation, but special adaptive housing is the greater of the two benefits. So therefore, it's typically not addressed because the special adaptive housing is the greater of the two benefits. And as far as that is, those are the additional benefits that come with ALS. Thank you.
Now, can they get their home modified? Like, say the person now wants to stay in their own home. Is there grants or benefits that allow them to make changes to their home other than their vehicle? Maybe they can make changes to the house they live in. Is that possible?
Yes, that's the special adaptive housing benefit that I spoke of. So the auto, there's two separate ones. There's the auto and then there's the housing. So they get both of those automatically.
Okay, wow. And then, so when a person is going through the experience, have you had any connection with people that have been diagnosed with ALS that have gone through this?
I've been working with the VA for about 12 years, and this law was changed on January 19th of 2012. And at that time, I was actually tasked on this project. So I've actually been working ALS claims since that date of that law changed. So I've actually been able to see, claims evolve. I'm the SME, or the special matter expert on site for ALS claims. So I typically see most of them. I work very closely with the powers of attorney. I particularly work very closely with PVA, just because they typically have a large bulk of veterans that they work with. But there are different POAs on site that do work with veterans. So as we mentioned earlier with the application process, you could do the e-benefits. You also can come into the office. There are our intake center in the front of the office. There's people on site. You can also call the 1-800 number to make an appointment. The 1-800 number is 1-800-827-1000. They can also go to online. We have a visitor engagement report application. So if they don't want to call and they want to make an appointment at the Chicago regional office, they can go online and schedule an appointment. And then the other thing is the power of attorneys are also opportunities for people to come and get assistance with their claims. And then back to the question that you had, which was what? Because I feel like I gave you a lot of information and I just want to make sure I answered it.
So the question was mainly, like, when you kind of mentioned a little bit, so you work with people for many years. So the next question was basically, what kind of impact have you seen personally from the benefits that people with ALS have gotten from the VA? How does that improve their lives? And what's the feedback you've gotten from the people who actually experienced this? Is it an easy process? And then as a follow-up, if you can lead into this, what would you recommend for people with ALS? How to get started, and what are some of the common mistakes that people make when they file their claims?
Yeah. So I think that's really good, because I think that with ALS, the first thing is that we really try our best to expedite all ALS claims. So if you're able to prepare all of your documents, like we said, the only things we need are verification of service and verification of diagnosis with a complete application. So if this is the initial time, the first time that you're doing this, gather those documents. If you're trying to gather the documents, file an intent to file. The intent to file is a placeholder. So basically, it'll say from today, you're going to receive compensation from today. So it may take 2 weeks to get your documents together. But if you have that intent to file today, then we can go ahead and have that as a placeholder until they gather the documents. The average turnaround time, I would say, for these claims, while in our office, is typically like 5 to 7 days. And that's if a claim is fully developed, right? Because it has to kind of go through different hands through the development to make sure that everything is done, and then to us. But it's usually a quick turnover. If we are hanging on to it sometimes, it's because usually it needs additional signatures. When there's higher levels of aid and attendance, we have to have it go through a couple eyes, because we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. So sometimes it lags on the tail end, only because we want to make sure that we're providing them the correct benefits, right? And as far as what kind of benefits and what has happened throughout the years, I mean, I think that it's terrible. The disease is terrible. I'm very empathetic to it because I can't even imagine what anyone is going through or what their families are going through. And so for me, it's a very high priority to get these cases in and out the door as soon as possible. When we have to set up exams, to follow up with those exams and make sure we get them in. So that's why we say if you can have private medical evidence, there are the forms online where they can download the DBQs, which is the Disability Benefits Questionnaires, which is basically a template of the examination that they could take to their private examiners and they can complete it and then they can submit it to us. The other thing is if you already have ALS, if you're already service connected for ALS and things are not getting better, file a claim, submit that intensive file. I do see that typically with older veterans, I feel that once they file a claim, they're like, okay, well, I already received what I was going to receive. But then things progress and they don't typically come back, And so me personally, I would love to see people like, if things are getting worse, come check it out. Come, file a claim and have us, look out to see what we can get you or how we can help you, right? And so some of the common mistakes is that on an initial claim, the veteran must sign an initial claim. The POA, the power of attorney, cannot sign an initial claim. So that's a common mistake. So to make sure that when you're filing a claim that everything is completed, that all the questions are answered, and that it is a signature of the veteran. Other common mistake.
One point to that. So a person with ALS, it could be progressed to the point where they don't have use of their hands anymore. Because it's a neurological debilitating disease where you might lose control of your speech, control of your hands, your limbs, but it affects people differently in different ways. But what if that's the situation? The POA still can't sign, or a guardian can't sign for them?
No, there's actually, if it is the initial and if there is the situation, the veteran can sign with like an X, and then there's like a witness. And so if the proper procedure is completed in that type of a scenario, then there can be the signature of the power of attorney. But we're talking about that is not the situation. There would need to be some type of a signature. So in the case that they cannot use their hands, and obviously that's a part of the disability picture, there has to be an X or some type of symbol or something that like an attempt to a scribble, something that shows, and then there has to be a witness that would sign off on that.
Okay. So then now when people go, like we've seen people go through the process, how personally have you seen their lives been improved by what the VA has been offering them or given them?
Well, I think I've seen it mainly in the aid and attendance component because it has allowed them to bring people to help them, and it's alleviated a lot of the stress of the spouses or the children who have cared for these individuals. So definitely as far as the aid and attendance benefit to help with the servicing of it, also, providing the service for the auto adaptive, and adapting the home. Adapting anything is expensive in general. So I think that absolutely has allowed them to, make modifications to their life that's going to make their life better. And that, just to mention for the auto, it is a one-time lifetime benefit. So it's a one-time change.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that.
All right. Now, when people collect, when they're rated disabled, because that's a 100% rating right off the bat if you have ALS. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Okay, so when that happens, can they still collect Social Security disability?
Yes.
Okay.
So when we're talking about benefits, when we're talking about Social Security and VA, we're looking at unemployability. So if unemployability is involved, that's when Social Security benefits and income and that is affected.
Because a lot of people have the misconception that you can only get one or the other, but most military situations, military veterans benefits situation, if you're rated disabled from the VA, you can still get Social Security benefits. People need to understand that.
Correct. That is correct.
Yeah. So now tell me, what made you get involved with this type of work? How did you personally get drawn into being the type of person to hear these types of stories day in and day out and help people in this kind of way? Because ALS is a very, very debilitating and kind of the people that even are around them taking care of someone with ALS. It's very difficult to watch a person that you care about, love, lose their ability to speak, lose their ability to use their limbs, and then people that aren't familiar with ALS might meet a person with ALS and not understand what they're going through. Sometimes people confuse people with ALS with someone who has a mental disability. When in reality, that person is fully functional, fully intelligent, might have a master's degree, could be a doctor or a lawyer themselves, but they just can't talk or use their body the way that they would when they were healthy. So how do you get the gumption, and how do you get the desire and the bravery to go out and just tackle this for years in and years out?
The irony of how life takes us down journeys and paths, right? So I was actually voluntold.
You got 2 minutes, by the way, so we got running out of time.
No problem. Minute, really. But I was voluntold into the scenario, and I learned it, and then I got engaged into what it was all about, and then I just felt like this was my calling, that I needed to help these people, and I needed to do my very best every day to expedite these claims, and that's what I've been doing for 12 years, and I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad you're doing it.
And thank you.
It's hard. People don't realize it's hard. This is a disease that and I don't know how it comes about. Wish we had more time to talk about maybe that part of it, or if we had medical experts to go into that detail, those small details. But it's something that seems like it can strike anybody, and it's so comforting because when I read about it in older documents from the military, that ALS had to be service connected. But now you're saying that it does not have to be service connected. It's a presumptive disease or the presumptive condition that anybody can get help and aid for. And if you have it, and even if you're getting benefits right now, the important thing we got out of this conversation was making sure that you every so often go back and see if you're eligible for more benefits, because maybe you didn't get them the first time around. Thanks you guys for your time.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Arango, Molly Sikora, Roberto Salazar. These guys are with the Chicago Regional Office of Veterans Benefits Administration. Thanks for your time, and we'll see you sometime in the future. This is America's Heroes Group. We'll be right back.